I'm Myriam.
And I'm Elyse. Two friends bound by the love of books.
Taking on the world one chapter at a time. This is the Book Bound Besties podcast. Hey, Book Bound Besties! Welcome to your last bonus episode of Season 2 of the Book Bound Besties podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite books, have unhinged chats, and Elyse theorizes about what's to come because she has not read the whole book yet, except she did. Woo! Elyse has finally finished Iron Flame, so today we are talking theories. And if you want some more Book Bound Besties content, be sure to follow along on TikTok and Instagram. We post funny clips from our episodes, silly videos, and unhinged book reviews. So definitely go follow along. We have a good time on the internet. Also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Even if you listen on Spotify or you watch us on YouTube, it's really helpful for the algorithm if you leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts specifically, and it just allows us to bring more besties into the gang, and obviously, that is what we want.
Absolutely.
This is... Do we need a content warning today? Let's just give one just in case.
A little bit.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is your content warning. This episode contains topics that are not suitable for little ears, so do with that what you will. And with that, shall we jump in to our theories episode?
Yeah. So today we have two very special guests. Both women are theory extraordinaires on the internet, and we don't theorize all that much, so we wanted to bring in some people who know what they're talking about. We have Kat from Luna Books on TikTok, and we have Carly from Bookish is Better on Instagram. We had two very interesting interviews. I definitely buy into almost everything that they said. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this and also to hear your thoughts. Like, please send us your reactions. Some of these theories are unhinged, but it
makes sense.
It makes sense. They are so good at supporting their theories with evidence that, I don't know, I buy into it.
Absolutely.
So shall we get into it?
Let's do it. Enjoy.
Hi, Kat.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to talk theories with you after having found you on TikTok and your very wild, very scary thoughts on the Empyrean series.
Yeah, I actually think the Empyrean series is what made me want to start posting on TikTok about books in general because of the wild, crazy theories that I had that I feel like nobody else was talking about. So I love that you guys found me from that because a lot of people have some not so great feelings about it.
I mean, I will be honest, some of your theories make me very, very scared.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, I love just theorizing and just making predictions. And I did that a lot from Fourth Wing going into Iron Flame. And a lot of the stuff I predicted was correct. So I just kept it going. But unfortunately, things turned a little sour in Iron Flame. So did the theories. And I think people are not happy about that.
Yeah, the ending is definitely ominous and leaves me very, very concerned.
I'm weirdly not that concerned, but only because I was saying, I don't know, we don't know enough about Venom and
right.
what it means and what the journey to becoming a full-on Venom is. And Xaden seemed more or less himself at the end. So I'm like, how bad can it be? It's going to be okay, right? I'm trying to stay positive.
I think, I'm not upset about him being Venom or necessarily how it ended. I'm upset at just the pace of the whole book, I think. And then just leaving it on that note was just super weird. And so creative choice wise, I'm not upset at any of the creative choices, actually. I'm just upset about the structure and the fact that we were left hanging the way we were with the information that we had and the lack of information. So it was just you just finished Iron Flame with so many more questions than you had starting Iron Flame. And that was what I think was so frustrating for everybody. But that being said, I'd love to just know just your overall feeling. Other than that, how did Iron Flame compare to Fourth Wing? Because I do think a lot of people who love Fourth Wing could not make it through Iron Flame.
That's a good question.
It's a great question. I mean, I think we both were very frustrated through a lot of Iron Flame. And towards the end, there was in one of the episodes where I think I even said like she is losing me, like as in Rebecca Yarros is losing me a bit, because they kept running the same wheel of the same fight over and over again. And miscommunication is also not one of my favorite tropes because I have very little patience for that in my real life. Like if I have an issue, I'd like to address it and talk it out. So it was on that end really hard to get through. But at the same time, I do think there was a lot of interesting world building and we're getting more nuggets of information. So it wasn't like a complete waste of a book, but I do think the emotional journey in Iron Flame was tough to get through versus Fourth Wing.
Yeah. You're just nodding.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Fourth Wing was just a joy to read. And it was such a beautiful introduction to this world and the characters. And I loved Violet as a character in Fourth Wing because what I said actually when we first started our podcast on our intro episode was that I thought that Violet was a character so unlike other female protagonists in stories we've read, with the exception of One Dark Window. I'm not sure if you've read One Dark Window.
I haven't yet, but I will.
Okay, well, the female main character in One Dark Window is pretty ordinary. She's not innately extraordinary. A lot of the books that we read, a lot of the romantasy genre with a female main character, she is out of this world. Like there's something really, really special about her. And Violet isn't really. I mean, she's smart, but physically there's nothing amazing about her. You know, other aspects of her character aren't incredible. She's very, very relatable. But you start to really start rooting for her because of the way that she's using her weaknesses as strengths and making her way through the quadrant her way. And I found that all of those characteristics that we loved about her completely disappeared in Iron Flame. Actually, it's funny because I told Elyse I was rewatching season 2, episode 1, and Violet tells Xaden at the very beginning of this book that she won't shy away of asking difficult questions. That's never been who she is. And then through the entire book, that's exactly what she does. She shies away of asking every difficult question. So I just found that her as a person, she changed. And I understand that her world, you know, was turned upside down and whatever, but I just found it really frustrating to be in her head in Iron Flame compared to Fourth Wing.
No, I completely agree. And I have not met anyone who likes the miscommunication trope. So like we all just universally don't like it, but I don't even know if this is the it's like a no communication trope. It's like a bad communication trope. So it's like a let's not talk about it, but for like half the book. So I'm like, somehow this is worse. This has unlocked a new uncomfortable trope for everybody. But I mean, that aside, I still actually did enjoy it. I lost like a lot of my friends who were reading Fourth Wing, like couldn't make it through Iron Flame, but I was the only one who was like, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun, but I'm really stressed out, but I'm having a lot of fun, but I'm really stressed out. And that was just the feeling I had throughout. But I'd love to hear more about what Elyse thinks. Obviously, it's more fresh in your mind.
Absolutely. I read it in 2 days back in November. As soon as it came out, I just gobbled it up.
Oh my gosh, same. I went to that midnight release and then devoured, but it's fresh in your mind. So let's hear it.
Yeah, no, I think I actually was wondering if the fact that I read it over the course of, 3 months, made the miscommunication worse for me. Like in the sense that I was in that perpetual fight for so long, as opposed to just like blitzing through it for a week, you know?
Yeah.
I think that that's true, but I think the pacing issue, Kat, that you and I have probably felt having inhaled the book really quickly, I think that probably impacted us more than it would have impacted Elyse. But then on the flip side, what you're saying about the miscommunication impacted you probably more than it impacted us because we were just trying to get through to the end and to the point where they were actually communicating.
Just like flying through it.
Yeah.
But I have some questions that I'd love to hear you both weigh in on after reading the series. So my first question, what kind of dragon is on Darna and why are all her kind dead?
Why can you never say her name?
I don't know. I had trouble saying Andarna.
Elyse consistently says Darna.
Because the facts that we know is she is the head of her own den and her scales change, like she could camouflage. So like what is her real color? Is she gold? Why is she like more seemingly more magical than the rest of them? I don't know. And why is she the only one of her kind?
I have no answers. Kat?
I I don't really know. I mean, solid question. Solid question. My prediction was actually from Fourth Wing was Andarna is a princess, which she isn't, but she's kind of is because she's the leader of her own dead. I don't oh man, I don't think I have theories. I actually have so many question marks about the dragons still. And this is the Empyrean series, and we actually don't know a lot about the Empyrean. So I'm nervous to find out. Obviously, she's like very special. I think that like her waiting for Violet is really special. I know we talked about how Violet's kind of ordinary and she does come off that way, but I don't think that she is. Like there
I
is
agree.
something. She's definitely the chosen one, and so is Andarna, and something is going on, but like I don't think we're given enough breadcrumbs to connect the dots just yet. I think we're given just like the fact that they're both a little bit, you know what they remind me of? They remind me of How to Train Your Dragon, how I don't even, Toothless is missing part of his tail, you know, kind of how Andarna is like not fully grown. She has some deformity in her wings, I think. And then Violet also is like physically, I forget what it's called, but she
Oh,
is like weaker and her
EDS.
bones. EDS, she is EDS.
Yeah.
And they match each other in that way.
Yeah.
I think that's got to mean something, but I just don't know what. I just don't know how she's going to tie it all together.
Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. That was actually my follow-up question, like why are they destined for each other? But I think you're right. Like we're not given enough Easter eggs to like kind of jump into it. I did enjoy that in Iron Flame we heard a lot more. We very little, but we do get little bits of info about the Empyrean and how their hierarchy works and all of that. And every time we got that little nugget of info, I was so excited. So I am really looking forward to jumping into like more of the dragon lore.
Actually, I have a question for the both of you. Do you think that one of the books in the series will be entirely dragon based and there will be no humans?
I personally would love it. I'm totally down for that, actually, just because I don't know what the hell is going on with these humans. Like I don't know. And then another thing is the Imperium is split right now. And I think we're kind of glazing over that fact that not only do they have this ideology split between them, but they are physically split and there's a new Imperium almost. So I feel like not only are the humans really having a conflict with each other right now, but so are the dragons. And I cannot wait to see how that plays out. But this is also like super fantasy 101 is you have like this, I'm sorry, I'm being such a dork right now.
No, we love it.
You have this like conflict amongst like a civil war or some type of conflict, and then you have an external threat. That's like the formula for fantasy a lot of times, which I didn't know that reading Fourth Wing. I was like, this is a one-off book about a war college. That's like a Squid Game of a school. And then I go into Iron Flame and I'm like, oh, this is like a fantasy book. Yeah, she's like actually trying to follow the like rules of fantasy here. And the rules of fantasy is if you have these two parties who are at a conflict with each other, you have a big bad. Actually, I don't think we know what the big bad is. I think we know the bad is Venom, but I like to think that there's like a bad and then there's a big bad.
Wow,
a lot of the times in fantasy, it's a lot of the time it's like that. And it'll either be a twist where the big bad is someone we already know and didn't suspect, like it could be the King of Navarre, or it's just somebody else who we need to get to know. But I don't think like us knowing so little of the Venom, us knowing so little of the conflict in general is like setting us up for that. So I don't know how she's going to play this, but like the way that the pieces have been set up is like super textbook fantasy.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited.
Yeah. I think one of my questions did have to do with Venom and like who is the leader, but something that we have been saying for weeks now is what is the motivation of the Venom? Because the way they're behaving goes against kind of like what we know of the Venom. And like you said, we know so little, but if these creatures or these people really crave power and just want power, like want to absorb the magic from the ground, creating more venom is counterintuitive to that cause. So that can't be their main cause. There has to be a bigger picture at play here. And we don't know what that is.
No, we definitely don't. And I think like giving them a good backstory would really make this whole series sing. And I think just wanting power for the sake of power is a fabulous way to make it very flat. You know? So I hope there's just something else that we don't know. Or like, they keep alluding to like some sort of training, some sort of school. And I'm like, is there like a Basgiath for Venin? Like what's going on with them? Are they training? Do they know something that we don't? Are they secretly like good somehow?
Oh,
What?
That sounds
that would be.
No, I don't think I'm just kidding. I don't think they're good. They're definitely not good. But there's something we don't know.
Yeah,
For sure.
I brought up a theory last week actually as to who the leader of the Venin might be, or one of the leaders. And I think there's been a couple little clues about the Venin that made me think they tie into being like of Tyrandor descent. Kind of like this, their skin color is more tan, like Xaden
Yeah.
and everything. So I was like, oh, maybe, maybe they're Tyrish. Pirish. And then I was trying to think like, why is Xaden seemingly so connected to them? So my theory is that it's actually one of the leaders, whether it's the leader or one of, is Xaden's grandfather. And the tie to Sigale isn't completely severed. Therefore, the grandfather through Sigale is still tethered to Xaden. And that's why he was able to dreamwalk.
Yeah.
And that's why they still have the connection. That's why they're seeking out Xaden. Anyway, that's my theory.
Solid theory. I love it. I also do think like, with the whole bringing Jack back to life, it's just, we just have to assume everyone is alive at this point. Every time she's like, oh, they're dead. And I'm like, I don't believe you anymore. Unless you show me the body, unless we're having a burial, I just don't believe you. And so, yeah, that makes complete sense to me. I literally am just going to assume everyone is alive.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, as a consumer of like supernatural things and horror movies and stuff, until you see the body, do not trust.
Right.
And even then,
even then, it's like, maybe you could come back. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say two things, but like the conversation was going so well that I didn't want to like interrupt.
Yeah.
So number one, for Elise's question about Andarna and her den, she actually asked, I don't know if you remember asking me this question, but she asked me this really interesting question, which had to do with like dragon breeding. So if you think about it, let's say Terran and Sigale, first of all, Terran and Sigale have been mated for an unknown period of time, a significant period of time.
Right.
But they have not produced an offspring. And I'm wondering if that's because they're from two different dens, which leads me to think about Andarna and the possibility of her den persisting.
Right.
If there's no other dragon, if she's the sole remaining dragon of her den, does that mean that that breed is going to go extinct when she dies?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, see, again, this is my confusion with this is the Empyrean series. We know nothing about the dragons. And also the humans aren't, we're given this lens where the humans aren't allowed to study them. And I feel like that's a good excuse to keep us at an arm's distance from them at all time. Because we're obviously like moving through this whole story through Violet's POV. And humans aren't allowed to know this kind of stuff. We aren't allowed to know about the Empyrean. See, this is why I do want a dragon book, it turns out.
But that's the thing.
The
It
more I talk about
it makes you think, how Rebecca had always said that we're not going to get a Xaden POV until all of the secrets are laid out. So maybe it's the same thing with the dragons. Maybe now that Andarna's secret is laid out, we're going to get more dragon perspectives. And it would be really funny if like the dragon perspective book had humans, like the human part of the dragon perspective book is the same like surface level as we've been having from the human perspective book for the dragon. So that means like it'll be the dragon's perspective with like a bit of human interspersed here and there.
Yeah, that would be funny. I went into it assuming that the dragons could mate outside of their den.
Okay.
Like that was the assumption that I had.
But then like what den would that dragon be?
I think the baby would just be either the mother or the father's den. Okay. And it would just be, you know what I mean? It's like if a white dog and a black dog had a baby, it'd probably not be gray. It would just be white or black. It would just end up in one of the dens. That's what I think. Because otherwise, I'm so sad for Andarna.
I know.
She deserves to like have a full life.
Yeah.
I hope.
She deserves to be loved. But the other thing is, if there's a dragon book, does that mean we get dragon spice?
I don't know. See, I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure it exists.
Oh, of course. Monster smut or what is it called? Monster smut? There's a.
I'm scared to look it up, but you go off.
I'm pretty sure there's a subgenre. Like
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
100% there is. Yeah, but I love the dragons. Oh, should I go into my theory about the dragons now?
1000%. Go for it.
Okay, so Myriam, you've already heard it.
Yes.
Okay, so you know this. We got connected because I posted this theory specifically about Taryn and Scale that upset a lot of people. It is a prediction. I just want to say that. And it's not like I don't want this, but I think this is going to happen. And I think it would be good for the plot. Okay, let me just go into it. I basically think Taryn and Scale have been set up to die. I think we're going to lose them. I think there's a high probability we're going to lose them. And the reason why is because of the untethering that happened that I don't think people realized. Like Xaden becoming Venom allows him to channel from the earth. We know that he can now basically kill his own. I don't think he's going to kill his own dragon, but he could lose his dragon. And the reason why we know that is because of Jack. I feel like Rebecca was showing us, with bringing him back to life, with showing us that he's Venom, with showing him kill his own dragon. We're given everything we need, all the information we need to definitively say Xaden can for sure live without Scale. We know that Violet has bonded Andarna, which is like never happened before. So we don't know. Like the whole slogan, a rider without his dragon is dead. Like we don't know because no one's ever bonded to dragons before. Now Violet has. So she could potentially outlive Taryn. He could pass and she could still live via Andarna. Because the two dragons are mated, I don't think that there's any like rule here that would save one if the other were to pass. So I think if we were to lose Taryn or if we were to lose Scale, we'd lose both of them. But we wouldn't lose Xaden and we wouldn't lose Violet. That's the theory that I had. I basically said that everything that happened at the end of Iron Flame sort of set them up to potentially die.
I laughed so hard at Elyse because her face when you first said that was priceless. Besties, go listen, watch this on YouTube because Elise's facial expressions alone, usually she's trying to keep it together. Like, Kat, you are explaining it so well. And you are right. Like, this is 1,000% the reason I wanted to have you come on the show and talk to us about it because you express yourself really well. The evidence that you have to back up this theory is really strong, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And it makes a lot of sense.
No, that does make a lot of sense. And I think that's why I was trying to process it as you were talking and why my face might have been a little shocked, but because it makes so much sense, you bring up so many good points. It kind of hurts my heart a little bit.
I know. I mean, when I say this, I sound like I'm a masochist and I want them to suffer or die. I don't. However, like I just couldn't ignore it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, way at the beginning of it all, I kind of said, I was like, hey, I think I need to mentally prepare myself that this series ends in death. Mm-hmm. Just knowing it's a war book, they're going to be in battles. Like, I don't know how many people are going to survive. Mm-hmm. So way back when I did say, I'm like, I think this ends in death. Like, I think we're just going to lose everybody. And Myriam was very upset.
Yeah. If we get a Divergent ending, I will riot. I will fly myself to Colorado and find Rebecca Yarros myself.
But since then you have brought up that Rebecca Yarros always says like she is a romance writer at heart and romance doesn't end in death. It ends in happy endings. So
yeah. That is true. I mean, I know that's a theory that a lot of people float around that this entire series ends with everyone dying except for the scribe who had to like transcribe all this. But I mean, I don't think so. And I do think even if that were the case, I think we would lose the dragons before we would lose them.
I agree with you.
I don't even want to think about losing them right now. I can barely get through this dragon. We're losing the dragon theory. But like, okay, some more important things to think about when it comes to the potential death of Scale and Taryn, which I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable when I say it. I hope people understand that. Like, I'm not saying this like, oh my God, I can't wait for them to die. Like, I don't want them to die. I'm just saying we need to be prepared for it. It would create such an interesting conflict for Xaden and Violet to go through because they'd be losing their dragons together and they would grieve differently and they would process it differently. And we don't know how it would happen. Like someone may feel responsible for it, you know? They could have been the ones who endangered their dragons. So a lot to think about. Also, they might not know at the time that they're going to outlive their dragons, right? Like we have that really moving scene with Liam where everyone brought him to his dragon. And like, I just imagine that happening, but they're bringing Violet to her dragon and then she fucking lives. Like, that would be insane. And she would be like, what? And then she would be living. And then another interesting thing this would bring up is what would that do to her signet that she has, that she channels through Taryn? We know that she has to get a second one for sure, from Andarna, but we don't know, could she still have her lightning power? I don't know. Like this could mean, like this could happen at the very end of the series, you know?
Maybe. Do you think if it doesn't happen at the end,
Yeah.
do you think this could be like the catalyst to bring Violet and Xaden back together? Because we know they're headed for another challenging time.
See, they would have to choose to be together.
Yeah.
Which I think is very fascinating because they are kind of, this was a little bit of a forced proximity situation because they have to see each other all the time vis-a-vis their dragons. Them having to go through a conflict, having to grieve this, and then having to make the decision to come together could be very powerful and would make their love story, I think, all the more like amazing. And another thing to think about is the fact that Violet doesn't like her lightning signet.
She doesn't like that it's destructive power. Yeah.
She hated it. So if she were to lose that power that she acquired that she didn't want and her dragon, that would be insane, you know? Like for character development wise, that would be insane. And then for Xaden, what also is very interesting is we have set up, there are thrones at play now, which weren't really at play before. Because he's like, he technically has, what is it, like the Duke of Tyrandor or something?
Yes, exactly.
Like, you don't just say that just for fun. Because we didn't have any of this in the first book. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, and there's a king. And his son is actually at this school. He snuck in. And then also, like, he's the Duke. Like, we don't, you know what I mean? So how's that going to end? I don't know.
I think this whole book, I mean, you said it at the beginning, it's almost like a setup, right? We are given so many tiny nuggets of so many different facets, kind of like you said, like we know a little bit about dragons, we know a little bit about the hierarchy, we know a little bit about then and now, but not enough to really like know what's going to happen. But it's like this book needed to be written to give us that info to then further the rest of the story.
Yeah. The one thing that I will say though, Kat, about your theory regarding Violet and losing the power that she has connected to Taryn, Elyse has not read the whole Sarah J. Maas verse. I don't know if you have.
Should I block my ears?
No, I'm going to keep this spoiler free, but she has been criticized because some female characters no longer possess the power.
I know what you're talking about. Okay. Yes,
I'm really trying to like circumvent this, but it's basically happened in more than one series. And a lot of people are unhappy about this.
Yes, it has. You're right. I'm just connecting the dots now.
Yeah. But so I'm speaking very, very vaguely so as to not ruin anything for Elyse. But all this to say, I'd be very disappointed if this were to happen. While I understand, because you know what? In those series as well, the character, I won't say that she denigrated her power, but she was resentful of her power to a degree. And so like the way that it's spun for us as the reader is that it's a good thing that this happened to the character.
Yeah.
But I, as the reader,
it doesn't have to be a good thing. Like she can be pissed about it.
Yeah.
Which I'd love to see if she I'd be angry. First of all, I'd love to see Violet be angry.
And actually angry and not just a petulant child. Because I think that the whole time in this book, anytime she was angry, it was never righteous anger.
No, it would be, I would love to see her angry.
Yeah. I want her to channel her female rage.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And you know what? Rebecca is the perfect author to give us Female Rage, the musical.
I think so. Yes. 100%. Okay. I know what you're saying. I'm not like, listen, we don't know what her second signet is yet. And I don't have theories there. I don't know if you guys have theories on that. I personally don't. I don't think we're given enough breadcrumbs to definitively say anything. I've listened to other people's theories and like they all sound great. And now I'm rooting for her to have 5 different signets and that's not possible. So at this point, like, I don't know. But I will say the only thing with Violet that is different from the SJM world, it's so hard not to compare the two. I know. But like the only thing that's different is that like she was a scribe and wanted to be a scribe and was like genuinely pissed. Well, not pissed, but definitely annoyed at like all the things that she had to go through. Like she didn't want to be a writer. She didn't want this violent signet, like all these things she didn't want. So and she was very vocal about not wanting them.
Yes. Though
that
she
is
did
kind of
embrace
interesting.
it.
She did later embrace it, you're right. And then another thing is with Xaden, like I'm very curious what you guys think, but whoever is the King of Navarre isn't going to be who he is at the end of this series. Like I'm very
for
sure
sure.
on that. I don't know how it's going to happen, what is going to happen, but it's definitely going to be someone else. I don't think it's going to be, but he has two sons.
Do you think it's going to be Arik/Cam?
I think it could be. He's giving like reluctant ruler trope, but then so is Xaden. So I envision it as them and then Tyrandor being its own country.
I agree.
That's how I see it playing out in my mind. If we're going like a very traditional fantasy route, that is what would happen. And what's so interesting is they keep saying that kings are not riders.
Which means the king will obviously be a rider.
Yeah, which definitely that's what it means. But also like, would Xaden still be a rider? I don't know. It would be interesting to see one of the kings being a rider and one of the kings not being a rider. I don't know. Again, the dragons might live. I could be totally wrong. The stakes are higher for them, I guess is what I'm saying, because the mutually assured death pact that they had basically is gone. Because you're so secure in the fact that all of them are going to survive because of it for so long. And that's just gone now. So even when they do go into battles, even if nobody dies, we know that they could. And that does up the antes, even if everybody lives, which is also a bad choice. I don't think the choice should be everybody lives.
I don't think everyone is going to live.
No, she's been killing people left and right. So
she's not afraid of doing that. And she said that. And apparently, I mean, I have to be honest, this is the only series of hers that I've ever read. But from what I've seen, on Book Talk and what I've read on the internet, she often does weave tragedy into her love stories. So even though she's a romance writer and she does write happily ever afters, they're always deeply, deeply emotional. So I'm with you. I think that we're going to have a lot of tears. And again, you're 100% right that we shouldn't necessarily be comparing them, but I do see this book ending like Kingdom of Ash style.
Oh, yeah. Well, because Kingdom of Ash had a very typical fantasy ending, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, that's it. But
it's hard to not do that.
You rooted for them. There was high stakes. 100%. There was really a little bit of everything. So
is Kingdom of Ash like the last one? Like the series is complete? Or
it's the last.
Okay.
She says, but is it?
Listen, it might not be, but for right now, yes.
What I will say is that it ends so well that I think it would be a mistake to
continue it.
There are loose ends to be tied, but not loose ends to be tied to the point where I think it would warrant.
So I think the series is done and it would be a spinoff.
Yeah, if it's a spinoff, I'm okay with that. Like there are definitely side characters who I'd love to explore their situations, but the main story needs to just.
Yeah. Well, another thing, a little bit more about this dragon theory that we all hate, but also understand, is that, I don't know if you guys know this, but Taryn is based off of her dog, and so is Andarna.
Yeah.
And he passed. She got like a bulldog, a younger bulldog, and then the whole dynamic of the dragons is based off of her two dogs, and then her older dog passed. And then it was like also seeing like how the younger dog adapted to that, So like, this just makes it worse. I know, this just makes it worse, in my opinion. She did tell us, hey, the dragons are based off of my dogs, and this is what happened to my dogs.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Oh, you didn't know that? Well, that's the thing. So Elyse has had to stay off the internet through this whole process. So there's a lot of things that I guess I take for granted that that you don't know.
Oh, the one thing that I wanted to add was I think we need to keep in mind that they're going to make this into a show. Listen, I don't know if it's actually going to be made into a show, but it was approved for a show, and that tells me that the ending has to be good.
Really?
I don't think they would sign off onto another dragon show that they didn't know that they could stick the landing on it. Because of Game of Thrones, and because it's just a lot of money. It's so much money to make a fantasy show because it's just innately so high budget. Like, you can't do dragons poorly. You have to like put so much money and effort into it. And so I can't imagine the ending being bad. Like, I can't imagine it being a divergent ending. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think also going into it, the fact that Rebecca Yarros kind of knew what the 5-book arc would be and had a plan just gives me hope that it has been thought out and we're headed in a good direction,
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Only time will tell. And who knows how long this journey is going to take.
I know. But you know what? I'm the kind of person where like I'm super critical of TV and movie adaptations. Like, I don't
100%.
know if you've read the Bridgerton books or if you have been aware if your algorithm is showing you all the controversy around season 3, but I am fired up.
I don't think I didn't read the Bridgerton books. I know what happens though. Like I've seen the videos of people explaining the differences.
Okay.
So I do know that. But I know that they changed a lot from the books.
Yeah, they did. And with season 3, they changed a really, really big plot point for a future season that.
Is it Francesca?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I do know about that one. I do know.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess we can say spoiler for Bridgerton for When He Was Wicked. That was one of my favorite Bridgerton books because it's really, Francesca's character arc is really beautiful. She mourns a great love and falls in love again. And I think that that's like a really important, beautiful story because it goes to show that like the love that she had for her first husband doesn't take away from the love that she will have for her second husband. Like your life is not over when you lose a spouse, especially so young. But also, most importantly, it's her fertility journey.
Oh, okay. And that's been taken out of the question a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
And like I did see a creator be like, oh, well, maybe they're going to explore that for, you know, an LGBTQ plus couple in Regency era. And I'm like, I don't think that was a thing in Regency era for them to have a fertility story.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Oh, interesting. Okay. I didn't know of the fertility issue. I did know that the ending was set up differently with the cousin, right?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I'm not upset at them introducing like an LGBTQ story at all.
Me neither.
I just didn't know it would be like this.
Yeah.
But again, I didn't read the books, so I don't think my anger is as justified as yours. But yes, I do think when books get made into TV shows, it's very stressful for people who are obsessed with the books. And I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't even want to think about it because I'm not even thinking about it. We don't have to talk about this. Moving on to Venom.
What I will say is, just to finish what you were saying, I think it is important. I think we did have a character that we could have explored, which is Brimsley from Queen Charlotte. Like, stunning story.
100%.
Like, so
No,
heartbreaking.
you're totally right.
So I just think that maybe having a story that is adjacent to the Bridgertons would still include that representation without taking away from, or, you know, again, like I'm going to like stop myself from talking too much about this because I can really go on and on and on, but Eloise's story is like meh. And Eloise's story could have been the queer story because Eloise is the one who never had any interest in the marriage mart.
I thought it was going to be her.
Yeah,
the whole
could have
time.
been her. Yeah, we weren't as invested in her. Anyway.
100%. I actually thought, again, this has come from someone who did not read the books and just watched the show. I literally thought they were setting up Eloise to be a lesbian. And I thought that Benedict would be bi. And then, you know how they have that moment on the swings together? You know how they always go back to the swings and they have that special connection? And like every season there's a scene or even 2 scenes of Eloise and Benedict having that heart-to-heart on the swings. And I was like, this is going to be a heart-to-heart that they're going to have with each other.
Yeah.
And they have a special, I thought it was going to be like that, but then they have heart-to-hearts over nothing. Like those scenes are kind of wasted to me sometimes because it's just her like, I want to see the world. And we're like, okay.
So then I'm going to go to Scotland.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Back to Navarre.
Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Violet's dad. There's a lot of theories out there about his dad, but
her dad.
Her dad.
But basically, like, my biggest question is, like, what happened to Violet's dad's research? What was the research? What did he discover? Was he actually killed for it? Like, who killed him? I have so many questions. Just curious if you guys have any thoughts about the father.
I think he got really far in his research. I hope that that's what it is. I feel like we dwelled on it so much in the first book, and then just to never touch upon that again, I think would be a huge, huge waste. I am more interested to know like how that affected the relationship he had with his wife. Because we were set up to really not like her. I think she was like this mean, cool mom. And then we were kind of set up to like, even though he's like passed, I don't know. Again, is he? Where is he? Where is the father? Show me the body of the dad. Because I don't trust her anymore. I just don't trust Rebecca. But we're basically led to like believe that he's like this amazing father and he was so great. And we don't know what happened, but he passed. And now I'm just kind of like, was he killed? Probably. It just feels like somebody killed him. That's my theory. But a lot of people have that theory. I think a lot of people had that same gut instinct that something shady happened with Violet's father. I will say I didn't hate the mom right off the bat. I think we were fooled into thinking she was terrible, and I never truly believed that. I don't know if that was what you guys thought about that, but I always thought I had a little list of notes that I wrote after Fourth Wing, and I literally wrote, her name is Lily, right? Her Lily reminds me, Lilith reminds me of Snape.
Love that.
I was like, Lilith is like Snape. There's some weird, tough love there, but there's something we don't know about her. And I thought it was insane that I wrote that down, and then I finished Iron Flame, and then she died and she sacrificed herself. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, whatever that character arc is, they're on the same vibe, Lilith and Snape.
That's a very good comparison. I think like her sacrifice, you can't take that away from her. That was beautiful and amazing and everything. But one of the things that I had brought up was just like, all that we have seen of her has been very cold. And I think the way her children respond to her kind of just demonstrate the type of upbringing they had. The fact that Brennan up and left Navarre, like faked his own death for all intents and purposes, and condemned her. In the end, he comes back, but condemned her to die, not caring. The fact that Mira, she drank the Kool-Aid of Navarre, as soon as she found out the truth, also abandoned her. And Violet has really mixed feelings towards her mom the whole time. It's just like, if this is how all three of your children feel about you, how good of a mom were you?
Listen, I don't think she's mom of the year at all by a stretch, but again, we just don't know anything. I'm like trying to think of like and I'm like, every time you guys ask me something, I'm like, well, you know what? We just don't know enough about the mom, about the Venom.
Yeah.
We just don't know. And it's okay. I think we don't have to keep exploring her story arc because she has passed. I think she's just going to be one of those confusing characters, and that's okay. Because the love she has, we don't doubt it. Her methods, a little bit weird, very weird, But now I'm like, okay, I need to know about the dad. I know he's dead, allegedly dead, but I do want to know about him and his research because I do think he made it quite far. Because they always say that he was like such a good scribe. And then, we always talk about how Violet's really smart. Again, I don't know if she demonstrated that in Iron Flame, but they're always talking about how she's so smart. And I'm hoping she makes a comeback, right?
Yeah.
And she actually puts pieces together in the next book. But I just feel like that's probably something she shared with her dad. And if she can figure all of this out, then I feel like he definitely figured just as much, if not more. And we need to uncover that.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I told Elyse, I think Lilith is the true morally gray character of
100%.
these books because of exactly what you said. Her intentions were undoubtedly good. The fact that, I mean, if they weren't, she wouldn't have sacrificed herself for her children. Her methods leave something to be desired.
Oh, yeah. Deeply, deeply questionable.
Yeah.
Sure.
Her whole arc really moved me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to the dad in terms of his research, I think the only thing we've been given is we know he was researching feather tails, right? Do we have any theories as to what else or thoughts as to what else he might have been exploring? Because if he was just researching feather tails, like, would that have gotten him killed? I don't know. Unless it ties in with Darna's story, but
I don't know how he would have been able to figure out Darna's story. I don't know if there was text on that before. Because feather tails, I mean, they're just baby dragons. So I don't know if there's something that we also, again, the reason why this is so frustrating is because we're obviously in Violet's POV and this girl doesn't know a lot of things. So we're just like, we know as much as she does and it's not a whole lot right now. So do you have other theories about the dad?
I don't know. I mean, it was brought up, I think, once that he might have turned venom, which could be part of it. I don't know. I kind of think he died. There's also theories out there that like he isn't actually Violet's father.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I like that one either. Again, going back to what you were saying of like how smart she is, or she so-called is, and how smart he was. So I haven't heard a theory that I'm like, yes, I totally agree,
I mean, I hope that, again, same. I don't like any of the father theories. People are like, she's half Venom, her dad was a Venom. I'm like, I don't know if that's totally correct. I did have I did have this theory about her hair though, because obviously her hair means something and we don't know what yet. And it does remind me of like the venom because they leach color out of the earth. So I don't know. This is like an out there theory that I had. And I think a lot of people have this theory also, is that something happened when Lilith was pregnant. I don't think that means that she has a different father. Like, I think that would be a crazy theory. It would be one of those plot twists that like wouldn't feel like a true plot twist. It would just feel like why did you do
Chaos.
that? Yeah, it would just feel
They
like
did that
chaos
for
and like,
Showtime.
and you're just doing it for the sake of it, you know? So I hope it's not that. But I do wonder if something happened to Lilith when she was pregnant. Maybe she almost turned venom and then cured herself. And that's why that's what happened to Violet's hair. I don't know. But like I do think probably Violet has the cure to whatever. If the goal is to cure venom, if it's a disease, and the goal is to cure it and to cure Xaden, then I feel like something lies within Violet that she doesn't know yet. And I think her hair is like symbolic of it.
Wow.
Like either that. When she, because we do know her hair is the way it is because of the sickness that she had when she was little.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, sorry, the sickness that her mom had. The sickness that her mom had, right, when she was pregnant. I think it was something along the lines of that.
I think Violet was sick when she was young.
Violet was sick?
Yeah, and which is why like her bones and joints are weaker, and also her hair is an explanation of that. But that's info that we were given. We don't know. You know, she could have been told that.
Right. But I think Lilith knows.
Mm.
That's what I think Lilith knows. And it's venom related. It can't not be, in my opinion. I don't think her hair is just randomly white just for fun, you know? And when we've been explicitly told that venom leach color out of the earth and they leach color away from everything, and we're looking at this girl and we're like, the ends of your hair are always white. Like that's not scientifically, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Maybe we'll find a Lilith journal.
Maybe.
That would be cool.
Or Violet's second signet is she can speak to the dead and she'll contact her parents and get all the answers.
That's true.
That's a theory.
That is a popular theory.
It's not what I ascribe to. I was just saying that to be sassy.
No, I don't fully ascribe to it, but I don't ascribe to any of them. So at this point, I'm just talking as if all of them are true and she can do all these things.
Yeah, I think the one that I guess like the most, it's not very specific, but just the idea that it's still tied to time in terms because Andarna's power was stopping time before. Not that it's still stopping time, because that would be weird to like have it, then take it away, then have it again. But something with manipulation of time, I think that would be cool. It makes it complicated though. Anytime you start playing with time and timelines, like things get complicated.
Yeah, 100%. But I feel like that's what will make Onyx Storm exciting. I think I'm very interested to see if Basgiath even continues to play a role in all of this, because now I just feel like we're in full on war. And I don't know, like that would make Fourth Wing such an interesting book, because it's like I really went into it thinking like this is like about a war college, you know? And then we're just going to be in this war college and it's going to be in this contained setting, and to like blow the lid off of that in the second book, 2 of 5, is like a little bit crazy to me. So because truthfully, I would be a little bit annoyed if she has to go like take classes again, you know? Or like if she has to go with the Rook Riders and they have to do more, like the runes are great. Sorry, why did I say
Griffins?
I'm studying for Throne of Glass trivia right now. The Griffin Riders and their runes. Like I love the Griffin Riders and getting to know them and like learning all that from them. And the little class that they had was great as a one-off. I was like, if she goes back and then we're just like in a classroom setting, ignoring this freaking war.
The world that's on fire.
I know.
They're like just in class taking their notes.
I know. And then just watching Kat like kill it with her little like lesser magic and whatever. And I would be very annoyed. Yeah, that would be hard. That would make Fourth Wing, like the first book of the series, even more interesting to me though. Because this is a bizarre way to start a fantasy series.
For sure. It's true. But I mean, I guess because it's only book 2 of 5, it seems crazy to like pull the rug out from under us already. I don't know where we're headed.
I don't theorize. I'm just here for the vibes.
Yeah. And you know what? We need that also.
Yeah.
We need people for the vibes. It can be stressful.
I'll gobble up everyone's theories.
Yes,
I will sit here high and mighty judging everyone's thoughts. Yeah. I will not come up with a unique, creative idea of my own.
So another thing I kind of wanted to talk about was Xaden. So as far as we know, he drew power from the earth, which
Mhm.
leads you on the path to turning Venom or makes
He is Venom.
He is Venom.
Yeah, he is Venom.
But he's still himself right now.
Right.
So what does this mean for him? Like, is he going to survive it? I was saying, like, maybe he'll Edward Cullen it. You know, he'll be like the vegetarian vampire of the Venom.
Maybe.
I don't know. What are we feeling?
I don't know. I think that would be too easy of a cop-out for all the conflict that would come from him being Venom.
I think he's gonna stay Venom a while. Like what I don't think is gonna I don't think we're gonna find a cure right away. If we do cure him, I think it's not gonna be in the next book. And I don't think it should be because it's supposed to be difficult. Like this looming thing of being a Venom. It's supposed to be difficult and he needs to go on this journey. And I'm very interested to see how it will unfold because I don't know if we can totally eradicate Venom because I feel like that's what we're led to believe. Are we supposed to just manage it? Are we supposed to like cure every single person? We don't really know what the goal is right now. I do think that Violet is definitely the key and like her hair is an indicator that something with her, there's some type of cure or something about her is special. We just don't know what or how.
Yeah.
And Darna choosing her not having color in the ends of her hair, like something is up. But I don't know. With Xaden's story, I don't know. I really, a lot of people think he's gonna die. I don't think he's gonna die. I just think we might lose him for a little bit. No, I'm
okay with that. There's another series where we lost a character for a while.
Yeah, and then they come back.
They came back better than ever.
And that's okay.
I love like when characters like lose their soul or turn evil for a bit. I think it's interesting for the plot and I'm here for it. If that's what happens with Xaden, like it's always interesting. It'll make for an interesting story. So if he gets a little evil for even a book, I'm okay with that.
Make them true enemies to lovers.
Yes.
It's so funny because that's how Fourth Wing was like marketed. Like I just remember seeing all these pictures and people were like listing the tropes like enemies, lovers. And I just remember reading it and I was like, I don't really know if this is true. This is just like a not good first impression of each other.
That makes me so happy to hear because I have been touting that line for a while of this isn't a true enemies to lovers.
No, it definitely is not. 100% isn't.
They never
they don't hate each other.
That's the thing is like the only thing that makes them enemies is that they are told they are enemies. Therefore, as a reader, I guess we are supposed to accept that like, oh, they're enemies because their parents are enemies, because of the war and in the rebellion. But their behavior never really demonstrated that. So I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't buy into the enemy bit.
I don't know either.
They're like
also like
with each other.
They are. But separately, I was like, I make jewelry off of like book tropes and I should have mentioned this earlier, but I make jewelry off of like book tropes and I sell them. So I wanted to wear the ones today that like match it. And so this is like for the people who are listening, I'm just going to describe it. It's like a little charm necklace with like wings and like little swords.
That's so cute.
And then this other one I'm holding is called a redemption arc because there's a little hand holding the chain. I wanted to wear ones that like kind of resemble today's topic. But my best-selling one is literally called Enemies to Lovers. And I was like, I'm not going to wear it. I can't wear it on this podcast because I don't think it is Enemy to Lovers.
That's amazing.
I love an Enemies to Lovers, so.
Me too.
But, it's okay that this isn't. I'm okay with that. But I think it is misleading to say that it is.
This was more forced proximity.
100%.
Which I also love.
Second favorite.
My second favorite. I do love a marriage of convenience.
Yeah.
Okay, which is in a way
forced proximity.
Yeah.
That is true.
It's just like an alt version of forced proximity.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Oh, the new one that I loved was Brother's Best Friend.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm trying to think if I've read a book recently of that. I don't really remember. Also, just so you guys know, I like had to read a book for my book club called Hurricane Wars, which was, I didn't know this at the time, but it was like Star Wars fanfic. And so now like it's based off of like Rey and Kylo, which is a whole genre. Apparently, like there's a bunch of books coming out that's actually like Reylo fanfic.
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all.
I went into it not knowing it, but it's just like now looking at Iron Flame, it gives me that energy. Like that like the Jedi Sith energy. I see it a little bit. Like, that's why I question what the end goal with Venom is. If it is to totally eradicate them or like, I don't know.
Well, it's brought up in in Iron Flame or in the whole series that magic wants everything in balance, and then if you take too much, it punishes you for it, which is exactly how the Force works in Star Wars. Like the Sith or the Jedi will never win because the essence of the Force is balanced. So if one rises, exactly, if one rises, the other one will do something that'll bring it back down to create that balance. Like that is the whole plot of Star Wars, which I've brought up a few times because it's similar, or what we know anyway, it seems to be similar for the magic system here.
So, I mean, could it be that? I don't know. I think we just don't know what the end goal with the venom is, which is very interesting to me. Because it could be just we need to find balance within each other, you know? Because I do think like there are so many writers, there's so many dragons, and I'm like, is that why on the venom side it's also rising? Because it needs balance, it wants balance. I don't know.
Maybe.
But it's definitely, again, Rebecca, tell us what is going on with the venom, please.
I know
We just want to know.
We're gonna have to have you back after the third one when we're given more info, because I agree, we don't have enough right now.
No, we don't know anything.
Yeah,
we don't know anything. We just know that Xaden is a venom, and there's apparently levels to being a venom.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. And I'm like, great. Great. That's actually so little.
So my last question is Onyx Storm predictions. Where do we think we're headed? Do we have any ideas of what the title itself, Onyx Storm, means?
It's Xaden. He is the Onyx Storm.
Yeah.
She uses onyx to describe his eyes constantly.
She uses the word onyx a lot. So I read it after, I mean, you reread it, but I read it after the title Onyx Storm came out. So every time the word onyx was mentioned, I was like, is this foreshadowing? Does it have to do with the next one? But yeah, my only thought would be onyx being Xaden and storm being Violet, which would make for the title.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, the other thing is, what is Andarna? Do we know? Like, I just have so many question marks over Andarna. If it's not Xaden, we don't. I had this idea where I was like, could Andarna be an onyx dragon? But that, I don't know if that makes any sense because Terran is like a black one, but then her dragon isn't given a name. I thought there is a possibility. It's a low possibility, but it could be Andarna because I do think she's really special.
Do you think she is not?
And Violet is the storm.
Okay.
I do think Violet has to be related. I mean, I hope she is.
Do you think that maybe she's not a dragon as we know dragons to be? Like, is she her own breed completely? Like her own...
What?
I don't know.
No, I think she's a dragon.
Are you talking about Andarna?
Yeah.
No, I think she's a dragon.
Okay.
I just don't know what kind of dragon. I'd love, we know she's a secret seventh breed, but we weren't given a name. And every time we're not given something, I'm like, why? Tell us what her breed is called, you know? Like, she says she chooses to be black, and I'm like, but maybe you're on it. Maybe it's because it's easier. I don't know.
Oh man, the part where she says she chooses to be black because she admires Terran so much, like, oh, my heart.
I know. I mean, that whole thing, I read it so quickly. It was like, truly, I thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah, it's funny. When I reread that chapter, I was like, I thought her speech was longer. I remember it being like so much more. Yeah. It's really not that long. She gives us a lot of information in like 3 paragraphs.
I mean, I just think that like the dragons speak so little, but they somehow they tell us so much. They really are doing a lot.
Yeah.
I love them. I don't want to lose them.
I just have to keep reminding myself, these people are not real. These creatures are not real. My life will continue. This
is a war book. I'm very curious what you guys think about Xaden, because a lot of people I know who like read Fourth Wing and then immediately Iron Flame, I realized dislike him a little bit more.
No. Xaden is like one of my number 1 book boyfriends. Like I will go to the mat for Xaden. Good. We have a video where I asked Elyse if she had to pick between Rhysand and Xaden, who would she pick? And I will tell you right now, I will pick Xaden because the emotional maturity this boy shows for a 23-year-old.
That's true. He is 23.
He's 23. And I say this all the time. I remind her all the time. He's 23. Literally anything he does wrong, he's 23. But anything he does right, he's 23.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Rhysand is like 500.
Yeah.
He's not allowed to do anything wrong. Like, how dare you?
Exactly.
Yeah. The biggest, I think, argument though that Myriam had made that made me like fully be like, oh yeah, you're right, is that in Silver Flames,
Spoiler for Silver Flames,
is that he kind of like gives you the ick based on his choices and his withholding of information.
Oh, 100%.
So does Xaden give you the ick? I mean, I don't like the question game, but I'm not going to hold that.
He's
over
23.
him.
He's 23. Well, I think, see, when Xaden withholds information, we understand where it's coming from. And I just think when Rhysand withheld information, we just had no fucking clue where was that coming, like for why, you know?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it was like directly correlated to Feyre's health. And it's like he's withholding information, but it's not directly related to Violet's health.
Health and survival.
I know. It was like he was just kind of like, okay, I'm withholding information, but like we kind of understand why.
Yeah.
There is a reason. I do wish he kind of just no, actually, no, I take it back. I was like, I like the way that she pried and found out. I was like, I wish he told her straight up. But then I was like, no, I do really like that scene when she was like, what's your second signet? That was one of like the, oh my God. Like I really had to like pay attention when I was reading. I was like, read slowly.
I was like, finally.
Yeah.
Jumping up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unless you guys have any other theories to chat about, that's the end of my questions.
Thank you so much, Kat, for joining us. You have been absolutely incredible. So much fun to talk to. Do you want to plug anything? Your jewelry line, your TikTok page?
Sure. My jewelry line is W Charms, like the letter W. And I am making a collection right now that is based off of like book tropes. So that's very fun. I don't know. Listen, here's the thing. I'm not going to plug my TikTok that much because I just feel like if I was meant to find you, I would have found you by now. Honestly, it's a little chaotic over there, but you're welcome to check it out.
Awesome. We'll put everything in the show notes, the link to your jewelry line, the link to your TikTok, and the link to the TikTok about Taryn and Sigale. That is the reason that we are here today.
We're all connected. Listen, this book connected a lot of people with our frustration and our anger. So.
Exactly. Yeah. It's literally the reason we started this podcast because I was in such a grumpy mood for like 2 whole days. My husband could not talk to me. I was like, please leave me alone. I am mourning the love of my life, Xaden Ryerson.
Not yet. Not yet.
No, not yet. But I was very angry. All right. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll definitely stay in touch. We'd love, like Elyse said, to have you back on because this has been
great.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes. We're going to have to catch up after Onyx Storm. I'm not prepared. I'm stressing a little bit about it. I don't want to think about it.
That's fair.
Well, hopefully your theories are incorrect for Onyx Storm.
Yes. Hopefully
that we have like a little bit of respite.
We'll throw all this in the trash, you know, and then I'll eat my words and everything will be fine and everyone will live and sing Kumbaya and it'll be great.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and good luck with trivia.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So welcome, Carly.
Hi.
We're here with Carly from Bookish is Better, who is one of our favorite theory accounts, and she is here to share all her wild theories with us.
Yeah, I kind of became an accidental bookstagrammer. I created an account just to share stuff with my book club, not really understanding how social media works. And then my signet theory kind of just took off and I just kind of kept sharing theories. And that's kind of what happened. So I've become kind of a place for wild, unhinged Iron Flame theories.
Yeah, and they're always so funny. They're always in your kitchen. I feel like you're just, I don't know, you have a thought and you just pull out your phone and you just start recording your theory. So it feels very fun and off the cuff, but also very well thought out and well researched. You always have evidence to back up your theories, no matter how wild and unhinged they may be.
Yeah, so my brother, I got him to read Iron Flame and he really loves it. And he was like a state champion debater in college. And so if you come to him with a theory, you really have to be like prepared to defend it like at a different level than I think most people have with their siblings. And so I work through my theories usually with him. And then when I'm in my kitchen, I'll like when I'm thinking about them and I finally kind of feel like I've kind of gotten them through when I'm cooking or whatever, then I'll just record them really quick.
That's so awesome. So one of the theories that the theory that you are best known for is your theory on Violet's second signet. And you have a whole series. It's highlighted on your Instagram page of what Violet's second signet is. Let's hear it. Elyse has no idea what's coming, and I'm very, very excited. She's an expressive person. So besties, if you're watching on YouTube, you will be able to see Elise's face as she
processes the information.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'll be prepared for any and all facial expressions because I get that from my husband and my brother when I'm giving them unhinged theories. And I'm like, okay. And they're giving me the list. Oh, it's been too deep. So my second signet theory is focused around Violet being a truthsayer. And Rebecca Yarros really likes a lot of mirroring in her books. So if you pay attention to the foreshadowing, there's just a lot of mirroring happening. And so in the first book, it mirrored that Xaden was going to be an intrinsic. We got a lot of foreshadowing for that. And in the second book, we're getting a lot of stuff about truthsayer in the chapter headers, just like we did for intrinsic and fourth wing. But the whole thing about being a truthsayer is it says it's more terrifying than being an intrinsic. I really think that only makes sense if truthsayers are more than what we've seen so far, is basically just being kind of like a human lie detector test, because that's not super helpful. Like if you don't know what someone's lying about, it's not really that scary. So when I broke down, when I was reading through Iron Flame and I got to the end and I get to this part where they're at that final fight scene with the Venom, and she, Kat's there and Kat's running up, and this Venom is about to channel, and she yells at the Venom to stop. And it goes, "Oh, you are a powerful one, aren't you?" And that's when I was like, something's happening here, because the Venom stops. It comments on the fact that it stops. It can't not stop. And I'm like, this is really, really weird. What is happening here? And so I finished reading the book and I reread the book immediately, and I kind of scoured it for every instance of Violet telling people to do something and them having to do it. And there's lots. She's basically doing it through the whole book. And my theory on that is because a lot of people think that she can't make people do things, or that her second signet can't even manifest until Darna wakes up. The only thing we know for sure is that Feathertails start channeling for signets as soon as their gift disappears. That's the only thing we know for sure. And that happens right at the end of Fourth Wing / the beginning of Iron Flame. So from what we know so far, technically it could be happening basically through the whole book. We might learn more because we just really don't know that much about Feathertails, but for what we know for now, that's kind of what I'm basing this off of. But if you read the book, she does it through the whole book. She basically just tells people to do things over and over and over again, and they do it. And there's a bunch of really weird instances of it. And a couple of my favorites are when Sloane is in that fight and she's telling Imogen to crouch, and she makes Imogen crouch down, and Imogen just does. And she's yelling at Sloane to do things, and Sloane's just kind of ignoring her. And then she says, "So I order her." And then Sloane does it. But Sloane doesn't have to listen to her. She can't order Sloane to do anything. So I thought it was really interesting that when she specifies that it's an order, she has to do it. And then when they're in the practice interrogation with Dain, the very first, the practice one, there's that part where she yelled at him no when he's about to go read her memories. And he goes, and he kind of is weird about it. He's like, no, and walks away all of a sudden. It's a very weird scene when you read it that way. I was like, what is happening here? And so Rebecca Yarros is also a big fan of Dune. So in Dune, your face, I love your face.
Oh my goodness. Okay, this is not something that you've ever spoken about on your Instagram.
It's in one of my conspiracy theory videos, but it's not in one of my unhinged videos.
Okay. So I might not have seen that one.
I love your face.
That link, I think, just
sealed the deal.
The Bene Gesserit, the voice.
Yeah, the Bene Gesserit. And so a lot of people don't realize that, because there's a lot of mythology behind truthsayers. I'm a big mythology nerd. When I was in high school, I had the opportunity to take mythology instead of English, and so I just took that instead. So I love mythology, and so there's a lot of mythology behind truthsayers. A lot of people don't realize that the term truthsayer actually started as a real job, not actually mythos, and then it became mythology. So, but yeah, she is a huge fan of Dune, and she and the Bene Gesserit can tell people what to do, always know when people are lying, have complete control over their bodies and minds. They can control other people. They're very, very, very powerful. They can also predict near futures. They can see omens and know what's about to happen.
I have chills. Oh my gosh.
And also truthsayers and soothsayers in mythology could speak to the dead. So that's one of the things where I was like, well, she's speaking to the dead in the book. And so what I think is funny is everybody has these like individual theories, like, oh, she's speaking to the dead. Oh, she's predicting the future. Oh, she's doing this. I'm like, what if she's doing all of it? What if
Yeah.
it's doing all of it? So I break that down in my highlights on my page, but it's long. It's 20 minutes. And so I don't think most people want to listen to the whole thing. But yeah, I think she's a truthsayer. I think she's commanding people to do things. I think she's predicting near futures, because in Iron Flame, like she sees that map when she's in Orisha and she realizes, like, she knows for sure the Venin are coming, that they're going to come for the school and the hatching grounds. Like, she figures out everything they're about to do. And that's exactly what they're doing. And nobody else figures it out. And I'm like, that's weird that all of these people who have been tracking their movements before she even knew they existed can't figure this out, but she sees a map and 10 seconds later she's like, oh, I know exactly what's happening. And I'm like, I think she doesn't understand why she knows what's going to happen. I think she's a truthsayer, and I think if you think about her needs throughout the book, because we always talk about like, who are you at your core? Is Violet somebody who wants to control people at her core? No, but I think your deep internal needs shape who you are at your core, and her need to know the truth, to know if Xaden is lying, to know if leadership is lying to her. You know, that is her deepest internal need throughout this book. And she also talks about needing people to listen to her. And so needing people to listen to her and then accidentally telling people what to do and making them to do it. Well, that's one way to make them listen to you. Probably not what she would choose. I mean, she wouldn't have chosen to be a lightning wielder either, but that's what she needed. And so that's what happened. But yeah, and then there was, and so people are always like, you say she's a truthsayer, but you don't actually give any instances of her knowing when someone's lying. And I'm like, no, but I do know instances of her knowing people are telling the truth, because there's an instance in class when Markham is there and he's the leader of the scribe quadrant is there and he is telling them this stuff. And she's like, oh, this is just propaganda. They're just lying to us. This is just a performance. And Devera is reading this report. And she's like, yeah, I don't buy this report. And she's just completely dismissive of it until she asks a question. And then Devera is like, well, I was actually there, and starts telling her what happened. And she's like, oh, well, okay, then this is all true. Like, she immediately starts to believe it's true. And I'm like, if you went from believing it was a performance a second ago to like, this is definitely all happening. When she doesn't know if she can trust Devera. But I think internally she does. She just doesn't know why she knows she can trust Devera. So that's why I think she's a truthsayer.
Isn't that something else?
Yeah.
I tried to write it down quickly. The story highlights is really long.
I'm going to definitely go and listen to it. But I was just wondering, is there a tie-in to Dreamwalking in the mythology of truthsayers that you know? I'm just curious.
Dreamwalking. I think that might be a soothsayer ability, because they can get in people's heads.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a whole theory on the dreamwalking that's happening that I don't actually think is really dreamwalking.
Let's hear it.
It's actually one of my unhinged theories.
Let's hear it.
So one of my earliest unhinged theories is about her Xaden's grandfather. I don't know if you went that far back in the.
I did. It's on my list.
So Xaden's grandfather doesn't survive the quadrant. But in the very first chapter of Fourth Wing, we find out that they're not allowed to have a family or kids until they're out of the quadrant. So I'm like, well, how did he have kids if he didn't survive the quadrant? When did he have Xaden's dad or Xaden's mom? I guess I'm not even sure if it's clear which side of the family the grandfather is on.
Wait.
But I'm like, which one is it? And so, this could have changed over time, obviously. It's been a minute since the grandfather was in the quadrant. Things could have changed. But everybody seems to think that Noalin is the link between Violet, Xaden, and Tarn, and why she is slipping into that dream, because she seems to be like unknowingly slipping into this dream. And is it her dream or is it Xaden's dream? And at the end, it seems to allude that it's Xaden's dream, which I believe it is Xaden's dream. I think she is slipping into that dream through their bond while they're asleep. But I think that dream is happening because he is somehow linked to the Venin. And I think it's potentially through his grandfather, who didn't survive the quadrant, but maybe he's actually Venin.
I also came to that conclusion.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. I brought that up last week. That was kind of my, I guess, explanation, especially because one of the biggest things is they keep referring to the he and the leader, the he. And if Rebecca is harping on so much about this person that we don't know their identity, once the identity is revealed, it has to be someone we know. like I feel like it would be such a downfall if it was just some random person. So I started thinking about like, who could it be of all the dead, quote unquote, dead people that we know of? And my conclusion was also the grandfather. And that's how I explained that. I was saying it's through way of Sigale, would still have some sort of bond, and then to Xaden. But I didn't go as far as to say, and Violet is also tethered, and that's how she got into the dream. But I love that you also drew that conclusion. That makes me so happy.
No, I definitely think that's where this is going. And I think we know that they can slip into each other's heads because, I mean, in the chair scene, that's what Xaden does. He pulls Violet into his mind and then very promptly regrets it. But I think that they can probably do that in their sleep unknowingly, especially like if their emotions are heightened or if they're feeling something in their sleep. And then, I think that could happen. I don't think if she is dreamwalking and that's a part of her signet, I think it could be a part of her signet. But I think it's also because they have that bond, it's hard for me to say, oh, it's definitely a part of her signet, because anything with Xaden, I tried to be very careful about including that in my theory because they share a bond. So I'm like, well, how much of that can you say is a signet and how much of that is just them sharing a bond? How much can you explain away with that? So I try to be careful there and not use that as too much evidence because I'm like, I feel like it's just too easily to explain it away.
Right. I love that.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I'm so glad you came to the same conclusion. It makes me feel better about it too. Because I feel like people are always like, I don't know about this. And I'm like, I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, it's satisfying to hear.
Yeah, and it kind of weaves into another one of your unhinged theories, which is about the plot hole of conscripts dying. Because if we fall, into this assumption that Xaden's grandfather didn't make it through the quadrant, it kind of ties into your whole theory about the conscripts generally.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is a good reason why they don't just allow the conscripts to go to infantry when they're like, actually, no, I don't want to be here. This is terrible. I definitely think that and I don't think it's necessarily like leadership of Navarre's choice. I think this maybe was actually something that the dragons were like, listen, we've seen too many people try to become Griffin flyers and become Venin. We don't want that happening here. It's fly or die. I mean, it was a tagline of the first book. So I think it just makes the most sense that this is actually coming from the dragons.
Yeah, because the people who want to be dragon riders are obviously seeking power. And so if they're not able to achieve that power by way of making it through like crossing the parapet or making it through threshing or whatever, then they're going to be so tempted by that power that they would have the temptation to turn Venin.
Right. That would make sense.
Yeah, I definitely think this is like a desire to keep writers from turning Venin, and that was a choice of the dragons, and that's why it's just simply not an option. Because I'm like, yeah, that is a really harsh option, but I think it's actually because a lot of this is it's like all of this is worked out on bonds and agreements between leadership and the dragons, and we don't know what all that is yet. But I definitely think that some of the biggest complaint I hear about it actually has a very good reason. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it would in turn just be the dragons protecting themselves. So that would make so much sense.
Yeah, I definitely think this is about dragons protecting dragonkind, which is kind of what this all boils down to, is because it's really the Empyrean series. It's not the Navarre series, it's the Empyrean series. And so I think we're going to find out a lot more about, the dragons and dragonkind and why everything is the way it is. I think a lot of it has to do with decisions the dragons made that Navarre got stuck with.
Interesting. I saw somewhere, I honestly cannot remember where I saw it, but somebody had, and it could have been you, theorized about how if we got rid of the Venin, then there would be no need for the dragon. It was you?
Yeah, it was my Jack Barlow theory. I was like explaining.
Oh, it was your Jack Barlow theory. Okay.
I was explaining why they let Jack Barlow on campus because everybody's like, why on earth would they do this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, yes and no. Like, think about it. Like, the government in Navarre really does need the dragons now. Like, they are in a spot now where if the dragons ever decide they don't need them, Navarre is in big trouble, right? Because they have been enemies with everybody else. And the only reason why they don't have people knocking at their borders is because they have dragons. And if they can find a way to get a serum to give to their cadets that allows them to maybe turn Venin, but control the cadets and get the cadets to control the dragons like Jack did, but if they can also find a way to keep control of the cadets and keep them from turning too far Venin, then they now have control of the dragons, and there's nothing the dragons can do about it.
Oh, wow. So you think they kept Jack to test how far he could control dragons and how much control they could have over
They keep from him.
Wild.
Isn't this fun?
Yeah. Yeah, because they're all very good points. You know, like there's so many theories out there, but often I'm just like, yeah, but based on what? You know, like this doesn't make sense. Like based on what? But everything you're saying, I'm like, no, that does make sense. As scary.
Yeah, I try to approach everything from motivations. Like, what are everybody's motivations in this? Like, there's like, you know, the government political side, there's the writers' motivations, there's the dragons' motivations, like there's other countries, like, and when you get all that mixed together, you have to kind of figure out, like, you know, it's one of those things where every decision creates another problem. And so that's kind of what they're dealing with now, right? Like they've made a lot of decisions that are creating a lot of other problems, but what problems were they trying to solve? So that's what I think Jack was. I think he was an experiment to figure out how to control the dragons and keep control of the cadets, even if they turned.
So do you think Noalin wasn't trying to repair him?
I don't know if they were trying to fully heal him. I think there's two ways you could look at this. Like, they wanted to fully heal him so they know that they could turn Riders venom, get them to control their dragons, do whatever they wanted, and then maybe put people back so that way, you know, it's easier sell to get people to turn venom if they can cure them, but also maybe just cure him enough that he is controllable, you know, that they're keeping him from being too far venom. I think you really could look at it either way, and I don't know that we have enough information yet to know either what direction that they're going, but I definitely think that this was all about controlling the riders and the dragons.
Yeah, if that is the case, I wonder like how many people in leadership were aware. Like, is it just a few select people, or does all of the government know? Like, how deep does this go? You know, like so much to think about.
Yeah, I definitely think it probably goes pretty high up considering what they're working with.
Crazy.
It is very crazy. I mean, Elyse and I talk about a lot that the whole notion of the venom hierarchy is counterproductive to their goals, because their goal is to,
as far as we know,
yes, that's true. Their goal is to amass power, right? Like they are constantly in the pursuit of energy and power from the ground. But if you have more and more venom, you are sharing that limited resource with more and more people.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't seem like it makes sense.
It seems, counter to their cause, as far as we know. So basically what we keep saying is like, what is the venom's end game? Like, what is their goal here?
I definitely think that there is some old like frustrations between like, because, you know, we go back to the first 6 in this book, we start learning about the first 6 writers, and, you know, we know one of them did something, you know, to take out the venom, and that there was this, you know, allegedly, maybe it was a sibling, maybe it wasn't, person who turned venom out of jealousy. But was it jealousy? Maybe they turned out of love. Maybe they turned to try to save someone. Maybe all of this is a huge vendetta against dragons, and thus Navarre. So I'm thinking that we're actually probably looking here at like an age-old vendetta.
I just have goosebumps like this whole time. I just keep getting shivers, because that's, you know, the thought of someone turning for love has been introduced.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens with Xaden at the end. You know, he turns to protect Violet, and, you know, it's the best villains are the heroes of their own stories. So, you know, was this original venom, this original person that turned, were they really the bad guy, or were they just also trying to save people they loved? Like, we don't know the dynamic back then, and it's easy to be like, oh, they were just jealous. So they gave up their soul, as you do when you're jealous. You know, I don't know that that's it. I'm willing to bet that we really don't have the full story there and why they did. And I'm willing to bet that they have some pretty good reasons that are going to mirror reasons that are happening now, and that we're going to find out a lot more. And that through that, you know, like I said, otherwise it's just not a very good villain. And I think Rebecca Yarros is going to write us a fantastic villain.
Yeah.
And I think when we understand their motivations, it's going to make a lot more sense. But I definitely think this is, you know, vendetta related, or maybe trying to get something to get back to the person that they loved.
Woo! Yeah. Oh my goodness. that is a theory I have not heard. I have scoured the internet. I feel like I have dove in deep
I have done the opposite. I try to avoid them.
But that's because you're very clever and you come up with theories. I am an avid consumer of theories, but I'm just here for the vibes. When I read a book, I say this all the time. I fall for the author's manipulation 1000%. In Fourth Wing, I was Team Dain until I wasn't. And then in Iron Flame, I was not Team Dain until I was. So, I'm an ideal reader because I will not question anything. I will not try to predict anything. I am along for the ride and I enjoy it. And so because I am the way I am and my brain, that's just the way my brain is, I just consume as much theory and extra content I can find.
Yeah, I do get that. I do love extra content on books. When I started making my theories, though, I was like, I have to be really careful because if I start looking at a bunch of random theories, none of my theories will work together. And it was really important that my theories didn't contradict each other. And so I try to be really careful with that all of my theories, none of them actually contradict other theories.
Yeah.
So I knew if I started listening to a bunch of other theories, I would just be like all over the place, which would make sense. But so I try to be really careful not to consume theories. Now the only theories I really see are the ones people send to me and are like, hey, can you explain this to me or break this down for me? I'm like, sure. So those are the only ones.
Or be like, why does this work or not work?
Yeah. So I have a question. When did you figure out that Brennan was alive?
On the last page of Fourth Wing.
Did you figure it out, Elyse? Did you figure it out earlier?
When did I figure it out, Myriam?
Okay, so when we were going through Fourth Wing, I thought it would be really fun to intersperse the bonus chapters that came in with Iron Flame into our season 1 of Fourth Wing. And so Elyse is reading chapter 9, which is the sparring session that Violet and Xaden have in front of everyone that's like very, very tense. And in it, he says something about Brennan. And I didn't realize, I had read it immediately upon reading Iron Flame.
What you're talking about.
And so I'm reading it the night before just to kind of refresh my memory. And I come to that page and I'm like, oh no. And I'm in bed with my husband and I tell him, oh my gosh, oh no, I just made this huge mistake. I just spoiled like the cliffhanger of the book for Elyse. And I felt so bad. And here he's beside me freaking out thinking, I've just ruined our friendship and, she's going to be so mad at me. And he's like, how could you do this? And so I'm freaking out. He's freaking out. We're both freaking out. Anyway, Elyse is very, very kind about it.
It was fun. It was funny because I had read it, I guess a day or two before her, but I texted her being like, holy shit, page, whatever it was, like 209. And then she was like, oh yeah, it's really good.
Because I thought it was like the spicy tension that was happening right before the Brennan thing.
And to be honest, we try not to discuss the book too much outside of recording because we want our reactions to be genuine and stuff. So I didn't say more than that, but she hadn't clued in at that moment until she read it the night after, and then was like, oh my God, I fucked up. So I knew really early on, but not because I predicted it.
I noticed it when they brought in Book of Brennan.
Really?
They started Book of Brennan. I was like, oh yeah, he's got to be alive. Because I just figured she wasn't going to spend this much page. Because I feel like we were learning so much about Brennan so early on that I was like, she's not going to spend this much page space on a character who's gone. So I just kind of figured he was alive. As soon as Book of Brennan was brought in, I'm like, oh yeah, no, he's still definitely alive.
Wow.
That's still really early on.
It is very early.
I just was like, I felt like we're getting way too much character development for a character if they're gone. I'm like, we're not going to keep developing a character if they're gone. So that's why I figured. But I'm sure if you have the holiday edition of Fourth Wing and you read chapter 9, it is definitely going to ruin it for you.
Yeah. We had to put a lot of spoiler warnings. And
yeah. We were good about it. But how do you feel about Noalin and Brennan? Just because we were talking about turning for love. And when I read Fourth Wing, I was like, oh, they were a couple. Like, that's how I took it. It's not explicitly written that way. That's just kind of what I took from it. Whether he died for love or turned for love, like that could be up for debate. But what are your feelings on their relationship? And
so I definitely think Noalin and Brennan had a vibe, and I don't know exactly how far their relationship went, or if it was like one of those, things that they wanted a relationship but they never pursued it. But I definitely think they had a vibe, and I don't know how far it went, but I definitely think that Noalin tried to save him out of love for Brennan. But I think he probably, I mean, they were in the same squad, and they always talk about how squads are families and how close they are. So I don't know that a squad member wouldn't try to do that for any squad member, but I definitely still felt like they had a vibe. And I definitely think they had some sort of relationship or want for a relationship.
Yeah. Maybe.
Noalin, Venin, not Venin. I know you have an alternate theory.
I think Noalin is dead, unfortunately. I do think he's dead, but I had a whole theory on that where Kaori says if you resurrect someone, it makes you a god. And so I think maybe he is like some sort of lower deity. And I think that maybe he is the one that sent Violet Liam.
I'm going to cry. I get very emotional around talking about Liam, but
Liam's the best.
Oh, I love that.
Whole scene, that's
I
the
literally
only part
have tears right now.
That was the only part in Iron Flame I cried, was when Liam was back. I cried in that part where he was reassuring her he wouldn't leave her when she thought they were going to kill her. That's the part I lost it and cried in the book. And so I will cry every time I read that part. And I read the book 7 times now.
I'm such a hardo. I didn't cry once in either book. I kept it together.
Oh, really? I sobbed when Liam died.
Same.
Oh my gosh.
I cried on the podcast when we talked about it. I don't know. He was such a sweet character.
I know.
Just
he was great. I loved him. I don't know. I didn't cry. But you know what? I did cry when we talked about Lilith's death on the podcast. I didn't cry reading it, but I cried on the podcast talking about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I am not a Lilith fan. I think I like Dain more than I like Lilith. And I think that always surprises people.
I don't know. I think that Lilith was not the greatest mom, but she loved her kids in a way that they could not understand. And I think that she continued to show that love in a way they could not understand till the very end. And I think that that's really beautiful. She didn't care what they thought of her, if they hated her, whatever. She was still going to do what she thought would protect them. And to me, that's the mark of a good parent, where you do your best for your kid, whether they can appreciate it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I do get that. I do. I think I feel like I have a lot of, I really don't like Lilith. I think that's just my own issue with her. I really don't like her.
Elyse doesn't either.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I think Myriam
wasn't that upset when she died. I was okay.
I think Myriam has a lot of grace for her. I can't take away what she did, her sacrifice. And I've said it before, you can't take that away from her. I think it's amazing what she did, but I just have trouble letting go, just because we see her through her children's eyes, and the way her children see her and feel about her is evident of how their upbringing was. And I just think if all 3 children feel that way about her, she wasn't a great mom. And I know you're not saying she was a great mom either. I just it's hard to give that much grace. I don't know.
I just think that despite them having those feelings towards her, she still made the ultimate sacrifice for them. And that's what I find so beautiful. And to me, that's what is deserving of the grace. There has to be something we aren't aware of that makes, ties that bow and makes that possible. Because otherwise it just makes no sense. Why would she be so mean to her kids or so cold to her kids, but then love them so much that she would die for them and have this beautiful speech right before she died for them?
I mean, part of it could just be she didn't know how to love.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to live with someone like that.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I get both sides of the argument, and I definitely have gone off of my stories about Lilith before. And I definitely feel like there is definitely people who, I think you guys are on both sides of the fence on this one. There's definitely the Elyse camp and the Myriam camp, and I think I'm definitely more in the Elyse camp of yeah, but if your kids don't even think that you love them, maybe you messed up.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, she does sacrifice herself for her children at the end, which is the ultimate sacrifice a parent can make. So I do get both sides of it, and maybe we'll get more insight into Lilith in future books, which maybe would give her a bit of a redemption arc, because I don't think she fully got it in Iron Flame.
I agree. I love that. All right. What are some other of your favorite unhinged theories that you've got?
I think some of my favorite ones are my theory on Dain. I think my Dain theory is probably one of my favorite ones. I think mainly just because it upset people so much. had more messages about that than even saying that I think Noalin might be a lower deity. People were like, yeah, that's fine, but the Dain theory I will not abide by. And so I have a theory that Dain is already Venin. And so because if you read the interrogation scene, it makes a lot more sense if you actually think he's already Venin, because he's about to help Violet and he looks at her and says, you should have told me all of this because now it's too late. But it's like, but too late for what? You're about to help her. What's too late? And then he goes to stab Varish for her to save her, but he doesn't use his sword. He makes sure he gets one of the daggers from Varish and then stabs Varish. And I think it's because when he read her memories, I think he realized, because you have to remember, like, these cadets, they don't know what Venin are. They have no idea what it is. And so I think Varish, because Varish was Dain's teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So all the people who were teaching the cadets, Varish was Dain's teacher. And so I think Varish tricked Dain into becoming Venin, not knowing what it was, thinking he just needs to listen to leadership, he just needs to do what he's told, and he's doing what he's told, and tricked him into turning Venin. And I think it's possible he used the serum on him to disconnect him from his dragon, so his dragon couldn't be like, hey, don't do this. This is a real bad idea. You're going to regret it later when you don't have a soul. And so I think he either did that, or maybe at a time when Dain was far enough from his dragon that they couldn't communicate, tricked him into turning Venin, because in that moment, like if you read that interrogation scene with the belief that Dain is already Venin, it just makes so much more sense. Especially the fact that he makes sure he gets one of the daggers, because he sees Violet's memories and she shows him that part specifically. And then he's like, oh shoot, that's the only thing that's going to kill this guy, because he must be what I am. And so I think Dain is already Venin.
And you would back that up with the evidence of his dragon's breath?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mention that. I'm glad you remembered that part. Clearly, you've watched my theories more recently than I have. Yeah, so there's only 3 dragons that are described as having like really bad breath, like sour or rancid or rotten. Like she uses different words for it. And the 3 dragons are Dain's dragon, Varish's dragon, and Jack's dragon. And I'm like, okay, well, we're all pretty certain Varish is Venin. Like, I think that most people are in the Varish was definitely Venin camp, and Jack obviously was Venin. And then Dain's dragon also is smelling like there's something rotten going on with him. And we know that when the way that they describe the wyvern, like when the dragons bite them, they always talk about them tasting sour, like they're rotting. And so I think when the riders are turning Venin, it's like corrupting something with the bond and the magic with the dragons, and it's actually harming them, which I think is going to be an important plot point with Xaden and Sigale in the next book.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's like, I actually did post kind of a theory on this, and it's not like, I don't think I have anything specific ideas, but I definitely think that, I think Taryn, because we don't really know for sure how the bonds between riders and dragons work. Like, we don't know how much of this is like permanent and how much of this is voluntary. Like, can dragons just break bonds if they choose to? So I'm wondering if Taryn is going to want Sigale to somehow break the bond with Xaden, because he's worried that if it hurts Sigale, it could hurt him. I mean, obviously he would care that it would hurt Sigale, but it would also hurt him and then potentially also Violet. So I think that there is going to be a concern there of what this is going to do to Sigale. And like, I think because we had a lot of foreshadowing in Iron Flame about them fighting and them not getting along and them having a difference of opinion on how to handle all of this that's going on. And I think that there is going to be a big rift in their mating bond in the next book because of it. And that's kind of my saddest theory I have.
Yeah. Do we know that they could break bonds though?
No, that's
We
what
don't.
Carly's saying.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know. And so I don't know how much of this is like permanent and how much of this is like voluntary, like once they bond, can they just be like, I'm out?
Yeah.
How much of this the dragons can control? Because the dragons do seem to have a fair amount of control over this.
Mhm.
So I don't
they
know.
can survive without the rider. They're weakened when they lose a rider, but they can survive unless you're Taryn, who told Violet that she was
going out with her.
Yeah. I love Taryn. I love Taryn so much.
I know. I try not to think about that line. It's very ominous.
I know. I am real scared about how this series is going to end. And people ask, that's the biggest question I get is, how is this series going to end? Are they going to live? And I'm like, I cannot answer that for you. I don't know. We do not have enough information yet, but I will tell you it is not looking good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's not looking good. But the one thing that I keep holding on to was that Myriam brought up that Rebecca Yarros says she's a romance writer at heart.
Mhm.
And in romance, we get happy endings. So I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to take that and hold
Hang on to that.
There'll be tragedy,
Yeah.
but ultimately it'll be a happy ending. And I'm hoping that that's the case.
Yeah, me too. I really hope so. I'm real scared, but that is definitely the question I get the most. I'm like, guys, I'm just out here spouting off unhinged theories. I don't know Rebecca Yarros. I don't know how this is gonna end. I have no idea.
I mean, the only person we know for sure survives is Jacinia, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only one we know for sure.
Crazy.
So someone we actually have not really spoken about today is Xaden's mom.
Oh yeah.
And Carly has a theory.
Okay.
I do have a theory, and I think I have more to that theory than I actually said in the video. It's actually in the comments, so unless you read the comments, you probably didn't get it all. But part of this is I think that everybody thinks Xaden's mom is probably Venin at this point, and that is not where I'm going with this theory. I think she's off searching for the weapon that they all need to kill the Venin, because they keep saying like, oh, there was this, we had a weapon hundreds of years ago and it took out all the venom and that's what we need. And I actually think that that's who Melgren might have been waiting for at the end of the book, because at the end of the book, Xaden's like, you're waiting for something. What are you waiting for? What are you stalling for? And Melgren obviously won't answer him. And I think it might have either been Xaden's mom or whatever Xaden's mom was looking for, because I think that that's what she is out there doing. But I actually, like, my extension on this is that I think that there's actually an 8th dragon den out on the islands. And I think that his mom is out there on the islands, either looking for it or has already found it and is keeping it safe.
That's very cool. It would be interesting to grow the world, because already from book 1 to 2, we grew the world so much, knowing that there are isles out there, and they've been alluded to a little bit more in book 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be so curious to like venture out there and see, like.
Yeah, I definitely think that that's where his mom is probably from, and potentially where she returned to. I definitely think that's where we're going to find out that she has been at least a good portion of this time, if she isn't still already out there. Because yeah, I have this very unhinged conspiracy theory that there is an 8th dragon den based on a Rebecca Yarros Instagram post.
Okay.
Yeah, she, like, I don't know if you guys remember when she posted that picture of her computer screen and it had like the word dragons all over it, and then had like Xaden in the middle. Well, it had like it said dragons 8 times on every line except for the line that had Xaden, where it had it 7 times. And I was like, well, Darna was the 7th den. Is this telling us that there's actually an 8th den? And so I was like, maybe there's an 8th den. I mean, there's like no evidence in the book for it other than the fact that we've completely cut off the Isle Nations. And I'm like, why?
But you know what? Like, I wouldn't be surprised, because Rebecca Yarros loves Taylor Swift, and that is the most Taylor Swift coded type of clue.
It really is. Yeah. I actually said that in the video. I actually said in my video, I'm like, she's up to some Taylor Swift level shenanigans in my video, because I know she loves Taylor Swift. But yeah, I suspect that we're going to find out that there's an 8th den out there that isn't part of the Empyrean, and that they have no desire to be a part of the Empyrean.
Interesting. I've heard theories that Xaden's mom is Paromish, and that's the tie with Takaris, or that's kind of what introduced that tie. But I do like the idea that she's from the Isle Kingdoms, because they have been referred to, like Elyse said, many times, but we know nothing other than they've been cut off in terms of
trade.
Thank you. I'm thinking merchants, trade. They've been cut off in terms of trade, because the continent that Navarre and Peromil are on. Are there other kingdoms on that continent? I'm not even sure. But that continent is too dangerous because of the venom.
Yeah, like the reason that they've given is it's become too dangerous. Like they won't even trade with Poromil anymore. And so like, and the reason that they give is just because it's become too dangerous because of the venom situation. And so they won't even come anymore to trade, which they used to trade until recently with Poromil, even though Navarre cut them off a long, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think that there is, a lot of history out there that's going to be really important to the venom and fighting them, and how this all started and why they've been cut off. Like, I definitely think this is all going to tie in, but I think Xaden's mom is going to be key, because I think she's from the island nations.
Yeah, I like the idea that she's off on this noble quest, because we don't really hear much about her. We know obviously that she had a marriage contract that stated that she had to stay around until the heir, reached age 10. But Xaden does mention in his argument with Violet about the secrets that they've been keeping, he mentioned something about him having a blanket that she had made for him.
Yeah.
something like, I think one that she had made for him, something like that, in his closet, and he was holding on to it. And to me, that signals some sort of emotional attachment still being there that is very unlike Xaden. Like, he doesn't seem like the kind of broody boy that would like hold on to a blanket that his mom gave him if she just abandoned him. I feel like that's more, there has to be some sort of positive emotion attached to that rather than, no, you disagree?
Yeah. No, maybe.
But he does say at some point when he thinks about her, he mentions his mom. He's like, I'm not even going to go there. Something like that. Which I'm like, no, go there.
All right. We need more information other than we're trying to lift you a blanket.
Yeah.
All we've got. Yeah, I definitely think all of the stuff with his mom and the timing is really auspicious because like she leaves when he's 10, his dad declares the rebellion when Xaden's like 15 or 16 years old. And like, I'm like, and then between that time period and Violet entering the quadrant, like we know that the Wyvern have made a comeback because that might be the first time that they see it in Resin, and the Terran admits that they had suspected it for a while. So we know like, within this time period, Xaden's mom disappears, the dad declares the rebellion because he is starting to see that the venom problem is becoming out of control and they need to do something about it. And then the Wyvern come back. And so I think that the dad, because like he had the Rybstad chest that he traded with Takaris. So he sent Takaris that Rybstad chest that he blows up. But I think they had more than one because at the end of the book, he says, you know, I'll get a Rybstad chest from Orisha. So I think they actually had multiple Rybstad chests. And so part of my theory is that the reason why the mom takes off is because they have accidentally let out some ancient venom that knew how to make the Wyvern, because I think his dad was entrusted with a Rybstad chest that was holding a venom that they could never kill, that they could not figure out what to do with him. And so they entrapped him instead of killing him because they couldn't figure it out. And so I think this venom somehow got out. And that's when the mom left to be like, we've got to find the weapon that killed him before. And so she went off to go find the weapon. And then the dad ends up declaring the rebellion when the mom never comes back. And then, you know, and then the Wyvern come back because like, why are the Wyvern back all of a sudden? Like, that's what's really weird to me. Like, they had Wyvern a long time ago. Why wouldn't they keep them? It gives them obviously so much superiority because they felt fine fighting the venom until the Wyvern came back.
True.
And like, why would they let them go? I think they lost their ability because I think there was an ancient venom that no one could kill that was in that chest that knew how to make the Wyvern from hundreds of years ago.
I mean, that's very possible because we know that the protection stones, the only person who were able to make the ruins, the protection ruins that all the marked ones got, was Liam's mom. So there's obviously certain magics that only certain people could do.
Yeah, there's like lost arts that they have lost over time. And so I definitely think we're going to find out that there is like someone that knew that they had trapped that has gotten out and is now being like, hey, this is how you make Wyvern. Because why wouldn't they have just kept them this whole time?
Yeah. Have you ever thought about writing a book? Like you're very creative.
I am writing a book.
Oh.
But it's just slow going. But I am working with we're each writing totally separate books, but we are encouraging each other to write. So we've been working on that separately, and then we send each other chapters and tell each other it's going to be okay, and just to keep going and, you know, stop crying and keep going.
That's so fun. You know what? A few months ago now, we interviewed an indie author named Miranda Lynn. She has an awesome standalone book called Till Death.
I listened to that interview actually, and I downloaded the book. I was like, I gotta read this. I haven't started reading it yet, but I have it to read. I'm very excited. It was a great interview.
If you're an audiobook reader, you also, or if you like to toggle or whatever, the audiobook, I've only heard clips because we just inhaled the book before interviewing her, but it's a dual narration and just the clips I've heard sound incredible. So I would also encourage that. But she is very good friends, as you know, with Melissa K. Rorick, and they do the exact same thing where they encourage each other. So I think that's really awesome that you have that support. Is your book a fantasy book?
And it's actually the first thing I've ever written in fantasy, because I've always written since I was a teenager, and I've just never really quite finished anything. But then I had this idea, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. But writing in fantasy was always daunting because you basically have to like figure out everything, like make up everything. You're like, okay, well, how do I describe how tall people are? Because like, does my world have feet and inches? Like, I don't know.
Do you have days of the week? That's something we talked about in Fourth Wing. We have months and days of the week. Whereas
they're so late in the book as well.
Yeah, it was introduced at Threshing.
Yeah.
And most books that we read, they talk about, let's say, like the warm months or the cool months or solstice or, you know, but they don't talk about time. They don't structure time in any way that we're familiar with.
Yeah, and it's a lot of people's complaint actually about this book is that she uses like the Julian calendar, and everybody complains about it. And like, it's a fantasy book; she couldn't come up with her own calendar. I'm like, it's actually really smart. It's really smart to use the Julian calendar, because what is every like fourth wing rabid bookstagrammer going to be doing on October 1st?
Yeah.
Right? We're going to do October 1st is threshing, and you're going to have more people posting about your stuff for the calendar. I think it's actually, from a marketing standpoint, actually like absolutely genius, and doesn't really take anything away from the story. So I actually think it's really smart, personally.
That's so fun. So you'll have to send us your book when it's done, and we can have you back on and we can talk about it.
Mark, if I ever finish it, it's it's in early stages, but I have it plotted. I just have to like actually finish writing it, and I'm in the middle right now. In the middle, it's rough, but it's okay.
I salute you. I don't think I could ever.
One day, we'll see if I finish it. So one day,
stick with it. Stick with it.
I'll try.
So there's one more theory that I would love to talk about.
Yeah,
because it involves one of my favorite characters, my sweet, sweet Bodhi.
Oh, okay. Nobody cares about the Bodhi theory, and I love my Bodhi theory.
I love Bodhi.
She's a Bodhi stan.
Yeah.
I love him so much. And so let's wrap up this wonderful theory conversation with my dear boy, Bodhi. I
love Bodhi. He is like the adorable middle brother we all wish we had. He's so sweet. Yeah. So my theory on Bodhi is Bodhi's signet is to counter signets, which is really interesting. Like, I think it's possible, because his signet is to counter signets, that he might actually end up on the opposite side of this war as Xaden and Violet, because who else can go against them but somebody who could actually counter their signet? My specific theory on Bodhi is that if he doesn't know already, he's going to figure out that Xaden is intrinsic, because I think his signet is going to clue him into the fact that Xaden is intrinsic. And because we don't know exactly how it works, but there does seem to be a certain amount of intuitiveness to their signets, where they will feel their power rushing up to meet things even before they know what the threat is. Mm-hmm. So I think Bodhi is going to figure out that Xaden is intrinsic, and maybe through that accidentally let the secret out. Oh, because we know the secret has to get out, right? Secrets aren't kept in books.
I know. I just don't know if I can handle it being Bodhi.
And because at this point, the only people who know are the dragons and then Violet and Xaden that we know of. Because as far as we know, he hasn't told Garrick or Imogen or anyone, right? It's him and Violet and the dragons, and that is it. Yeah. And so if anyone is going to find out, I think it's either going to be Garrick, Imogen, or Bodhi. And if it's Bodhi, I think it's going to be because of his signet. And I think that will be how the information accidentally gets out. I don't necessarily think it will be on purpose. Mm-hmm. I think that this is because this is a secret that has to get out eventually in these books. Like we are just waiting for that shoe to drop.
For sure, we're primed from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think it could be Bodhi, which would be really sad, because he, in one of the letters that he sends Violet, I think it's Bodhi he refers to as being like his Dain but trustworthy, and I'm like, ooh, okay. That's a little bit of foreshadowing I don't love.
No, I think that's Garrick.
Oh, is it Garrick he says that about?
I think it might be Garrick. Yeah. But he says in that letter, listen, besties may come and correct me, I have no idea, but I believe he says that with the exception of Bodhi, Garrick is the closest to being a brother. And then he says the thing about being like Dain. But he does refer to Bodhi and how close they are, and that they have an almost brother-like relationship, which I've actually seen a theory, and I'd love your input on, that they're actually brothers.
Oh, like half-brothers?
Something, because their resemblance is mentioned many, many, many times. And I was telling Elyse, I have a lot of cousins, and I don't think I could pass for siblings with any of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I couldn't either. So, I mean, I look like a dead ringer between if you took like a combination of my sister and my brother, that is what I look like. But I don't really look like my cousins. And so I'm trying to think, like, his Bodhi, his brother, half brother. I mean, I guess I think if he's actually his brother, he would have to be a half brother. And it would mean that Fen would have had to mess around with his mom, but I'm almost positive that the aunt is Fenn's sister. So I don't think that tracks necessarily.
Well, because he has a different last name, so that would have to be the case.
Yeah. So I'm not.
So it doesn't really work unless we've got some shady business happening among siblings.
So I don't know if that works. I mean, unless like because otherwise they would have had a child they gave up, which I'm like, why would they do that?
Yeah.
Maybe, but I don't know that I have enough to go off of, because I think the only way I could make that work is if they were half siblings, and that would mean that Fenn would have had to been the one that messed around. But I'm almost positive that's his sister, and I don't think Rebecca Yarros is going to go there in these.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think it's interesting how much she compares Auric to Xaden.
Really?
Because they get compared all the time throughout Iron Flame, and I'm like, what is going on here? I feel like she's either trying to build up some weird, like, either previous or current attraction to Auric, between like a vibe between them, or that there is some connection between Auric and Xaden we are not getting yet. Like, we don't know what that is, because they are compared a lot in Iron Flame.
Huh. I never picked up on that.
I don't know if I picked up on that either.
Yeah. Violet compares him to Xaden through the whole book, and I'm like, this is really weird. And then they both bond blue dragons. So they just have a lot of weird comparison points. I'm like, what is happening here? Like, there has to be some connection. I just don't know what it is yet.
Why did I think Sigil was green? She's blue. She's dark blue. Why did I think? Okay, well, we have a running joke about my reading comprehension, and that is number one evidence for reading comprehension over here.
That's okay. You know, I don't keep it all straight the first time. I make annotations and then I read them. Yeah. Like, I don't know if you guys use Kindle to annotate, but it's like a game changer for annotating, because you can just drop it into Google Docs. But yeah, I have like 340 something annotations just for Iron Flame. Wow. And that's how I keep track. Because otherwise you can't keep track, because there's just too much information. Iron Flame it's huge. I mean, it's a lot of information. I always tell people before they read it, I'm like, just think of it as 2 books. Like, before you go into this, I need you to think of it as part 1 as a book, and then part 2 as a book, because otherwise you're going to be overwhelmed. And they're like, okay, I don't really understand. I'm like, okay. And then they read it and they're like, now I get it. I'm like, yeah, that's a lot.
For sure. I mean, as we were covering it, the episode lengths, because we did 5 chapters at a time throughout the whole book. And by the end we were like recording. I mean, we managed to edit it down, but we were recording for like 3 hours to cover 5 chapters. There's just so much information. And every week we'd be like, oh, this one's a doozy. Oh, this one's a doozy. And it's just like...
Yeah, I definitely think unless you're a person that really loves to dig into the details, like Iron Flame just feels like a lot. I clearly am a detail person that I love to dig into it and annotate it. But yeah, it's a lot though. And it's a lot to keep track of. And I get mixed up on the details even. And I have to go look at my annotations and be like, what who was where and when and what was going on here? Because it's a lot. It's a lot. But I don't know if it's your reading comprehension or just this book.
To be determined.
Yeah.
It's all good. It sparks funny conversations between the two of us.
Can I ask what your guys' second signet theories are? Do you guys have any?
I have none.
None. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't really have. I was thinking that maybe it still had something to do with time, just because, not that it was still stopping time, which was like part 1 of the thing, because it'd be weird to just like get the exact same power back, but something to do with time. But part of that was because of the scene where she like sort of is dreamwalking, if you want to call it that, and then wakes up and Xaden's there, but then Xaden arrives afterwards.
Yeah.
Made it feel weird. Right? So it just made me think that maybe it's somehow manifesting with time jumping or something to do with time. And it would still tie in with part 1 of that power. But I didn't go much deeper than that.
Yeah,
we're not theory people.
Yeah, no, I did notice that. And it is really weird. It is one of those things that I'm like, I can't really explain this one. Like, I don't know what's going on here. It is really an odd moment. And because she does tell them explicitly, I'm going to tell Xaden as soon as he's back. And then he's back and she hasn't told him, and then he's back again and she's like, oh, I got to tell him. And so the only way I could think of that was that there was just something on the editing room floor about him getting back late and then having to leave like first thing in the morning before she got a chance to talk to him. That's the only way I could explain it away, that it just kind of got edited out, because there was a couple interviews with Rebecca Yarros where someone asked a question and she's like, well, wasn't that in Iron Flame? And they're like, no. And she's like, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to go make sure I put that in Onyx Storm. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Do you remember what?
I can't remember which one it is. I'll try to find the interview and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please do.
It might have, think it was the Vanity Fair one. It might have been the one that she like that Facebook one. I think there was like was it on Facebook or whatever? She did an interview with about like the Facebook book club or something like that.
Oh yes, I think I saw that one many months
it
ago.
might have been there. I'll try to find it, and if I find it, I'll send it to you. But I was just like, I'm sorry, what? Like you, which I mean, it's a lot. Like I get it. Like she was on a really tight deadline, and it's a really big book. But I was just a little scared. I was like, you think we have information we don't have? Because she keeps saying, she has reiterated several times that she thinks Violet's second signet is completely obvious.
Yeah.
She's surprised there's debate on it, and I'm like, it's not obvious. I can show you my annotation spreadsheet on Google Docs, and then you'll see and understand why we're all so confused, because I definitely think, like, I'm kind of just team truthsayer at this point, or soothsayer, whatever you want to call it, because I think there's a good chance they're going to be like, oh, maybe she's a truthsayer, and then a little while and be like, this is way more than just a truthsayer, and then call her something else. But I mean, there's definitely like a few top contenders, and a lot of people point to that specific scene and they say it's either time manipulation or a distance wielder.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, I'm like, but she'd have to be distance wielding to Xaden and back in her sleep, which seems a little extreme. Not just to go to him, but to also come back.
And be close enough to her dragon to be able to communicate with him when she wakes up from her nightmare.
Yeah, I'm like, the distance wielding didn't one track. The time manipulation makes more sense to me. And then I know some people think she's dreamwalking, which these are all valid. All the theories are valid, because who knows? We didn't write the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, time manipulation is very popular because of Andarna.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. And I think also people really want it to be a signet that they haven't seen before, because Andarna is unique. So, which I totally understand.
Yeah, it'll be very, very fun and exciting to finally get the third installment in the series and see if...
Do we know if it's going to be in it? Has Rebecca said? Like, yes.
Well, she said it's obvious in Iron Flame. So if it's obvious in Iron Flame, I'm sure it's explicit in Onyx Storm.
She did say we're definitely getting it in Onyx Storm. So,
okay.
We're definitely. She's like, you're definitely gonna know in Onyx Storm. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so scared for Onyx Storm, but we'll see.
Yeah.
It's crazy how everyone is just terrified. It's like we've all been like put through the ringer, but we need more, and we're like, everyone's afraid to get the third installment, but also deeply crave the third installment.
Oh yeah. No, for sure. I think it's just because like we just know there's so much story to unpack, and we're like all desperate for it, but also the foreshadowing of the story is just so dark that we're just like, I'm terrified, but I need to know.
For sure.
We're all there at this point. So I definitely get that. But I will try to find that. I'm going to make a note and try to find that interview and send it to you, so you can be like, oh yeah, no, she thought that was in there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Thank you so much. And thank you for agreeing to come on our podcast, and for talking to us, and for explaining all of these wonderfully unhinged theories that are oddly plausible.
I try to keep it in the realm of possible, but not everybody agrees with me.
I mean, I'll speak for myself. You're very convincing.
I agree.
I appreciate it. That's what I endeavor, and I'll impress my brother, who's an actual debater. He'll be happy. But thank you so much for having me on, you guys. This was so much fun. I feel like I could talk about Iron Flame like all day, every day. It's definitely my hyperfixation read. So I just really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me, because I love your guys' Instagram page and your podcast. So this is really exciting for me.
Thank you. That's so nice of you to say. Would you like to plug your Instagram page, basically anything else, your future book?
I don't know enough about my future book. It's in the works. I do talk about it in my stories on my Instagram. So if you guys ever want little hints, I am at bookish is better. It's like bookish_is_better. It's pretty easy to find. That's me. And I'm just there with my unhinged series. And I talk about micro theories on my stories. So if you want to see my micro theories on Rhiannon, or why they burn stuff, or any of that stuff, that's all in my stories.
That was an excellent little temptation to go and check out your stories. That was really, really great. And we will link your handle in the show notes so that people can come and follow you and be exposed to all the wonderful things going on in that head of yours.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I can't wait to hear you guys finish up Iron Flame on the podcast.
Thank you. And we'll hopefully speak to you again soon once Onyx Storm
Oh yeah, I will come back and talk to you guys anything you want, anytime. You just let me know.
Amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much. And we'll see you on the internet.
All right, sounds good. You too.
Thank you so much for listening. Please rate this podcast and leave a review. It'll help other people find us. If you haven't already, we encourage you to send new episodes to download so that you can be sure to be up to date, especially when we drop bonus episodes unannounced. This way, the episodes will be right on your phone as soon as we release them. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, we encourage you to check out our Amazon storefront where we have our favorite books, other random favorite things, and more. And we also still have that code with Smoke Show, BBB15, for hot sauce, spices, sauces, marinades. You name it, they've got it. You can follow us on Instagram at bookboundpod and on TikTok at bookboundbesties. And as always, you can email us at bookboundpod@gmail.com. Also, especially for today's episode, please tag us in any reactions you may have to this episode. If you have additional theories that we didn't talk about that you think we missed out on, let us know. Yeah, let's get to reading.